everyone, I'm Caitlyn Becker here at WHOSAY, sitting next to music legend Don McLean. Welcome.
Thank you.
It is such a pleasure to sit down next to you because it's a rare case for someone to be able to sit and interview someone who created art and content that has embedded itself into American culture.
Ah!
I know, it's like, you're like, this is just every day for me.
I know what to say. It's been a long road, you know, I mean, from the beginning. Of course, when the song came out and the album came out, there was a lot of excitement about it, and then there was a lot of sort of a blowback, if you will. People had heard it too much, and so then there was a downside to it. And then it started coming back, you know, and I think the thing that, then it stayed, and all the songs began to stay, and they began to get some traction. But the thing that really surprised people was this list they came up with at the turn of the century, where it was the government basically did this list, and they had all the heavyweights in the music business, and people from all over the country would, I guess, polled somehow, and it came in as the 5th greatest song of the 20th century. Now, I wouldn't, that's not my list. There are a lot of songs that I would think could be there, but it was a big surprise and certainly an honor for me. But so that had showed me that it really, you know, meant something to people.
I think you're hard pressed to find anyone who hasn't heard and know the lyrics to and love American Pie. I mean, it's like catching lightning in a bottle. That type of artistry doesn't happen all the time. If you read the lyrics, it reads like a poem. And when you hear it, it almost sometimes sounds a little more like a prayer, depending upon what part of the song you're listening to. And it feels like the song changes its personality depending upon where you're at.
My aunt wrote me a letter and said my songs are like prayers. I guess they are in some ways. I hadn't never thought of that, but then, you know, look at how often the big groups like the Beatles and people like that did this, you know, with these great songs and the variety of songs that they had. And when I was coming up, the Beatles were very important to me because of that variety, the things they would try and the different, they didn't stick with one sound. They had so many different approaches to music and lyric writing and content and crazy stuff, you know. It all worked somehow. They had a good producer. So I was always doing that, I didn't succeed in making some of the records as well as I would have liked to have made them, but I was always interested in variety. I don't, you know, want to hear the same song over and over. I mean, that's an art form too. To be able to do the same song 50 different ways, you know, is amazing, but I liked people that took chances with their songs and songwriting. And you know, we came into a moment, I mean, if you think back, in the 1950s and 60s, we had sort of the studio system. So you'd have the great vocalists, you know, like Sinatra and Peggy Lee or whoever, and then you'd have the great songwriters, and then you'd sign them to a great label, and they had great studios with great engineers and great record producers. And so you'd go and you'd have a time where you'd sit by the piano and say, yeah, I think I like that one, and and you were golden, you know. You went in and you knew that you had something. It comes the 60s and the mid-60s or whatever, and you've got to do it all. You've got to figure out what studio to go to, you've got to write the songs, you've got to figure out how to record them, who you're going to record with, and it's all on you. That's a lot. And so a lot of us, that all had to happen for me. I had to figure all that out. I had to be like my own studio system.
And you were rejected by a lot of labels.
Yeah, I was. Partly because they didn't like me, partly because they didn't like all the variety. You know, they wanted the one song, you know, and partly because I wanted to hold on to the ownership of my songs. It's called the publishing. That was the big reason. Because I guess in this environment I could talk a little bit about this. If you publish a song, you own the song. You have Don McLean's recording of the song, but you might have 50 other people's recording of the song. If Don McLean does not own the song, the owner of the song receives the income from all the 49 other people that recorded
So do you
this
own
song.
it? You own your
Yeah,
all
I
your
do.
songs.
I own them all, but
So you just sit on a big old American Pie throne at home.
I think that's a big old pile of money.
But that's a smart thing that I think a lot of young musicians getting into the business don't think ahead when it comes to that, because you're trying to, especially nowadays, you're competing with such a vast amount of people. To get your shot, it's like you'll sell your soul to the devil.
Well, the thing about it was in my day, you had music people who heard music, who knew music, who grew up in the business, and it was like the rag trade or some kind of secret trade. Nobody knew about it but the people that were in it, and you didn't know how you got in it, because your father was in it or something, like the diamond business or some weird thing like that. So they all knew when something was happening, and it was pretty exciting. You'd go down and you'd work these nightclubs and stuff. You'd cause a little excitement, and then maybe a manager would come down or somebody, and he would see you, and he would start to work with you, let's say, and then bring down some agents like from William Morris, and then when you were ready, bring down Capitol Records, these people. That's what the manager had to do, talk all these people into doing that.
My husband's grandfather was a music manager in New York back then. And that was very much the world that he was living in. And how different is that now?
And they were all talking to him. No, this kid's great. You got to believe me. I don't think he's got it. No, he does. Sign him. You'll see. This kind of stuff. And so they all knew. Now it's like, I think it takes $1 million to get in the door. You have to have all this money behind you, and really, the songs are non-existent. It's what I call a spectacle rock, and it costs money. I mean, if you look at, how much do you think it costs for Lady Gaga to go on the road and do that song she did? $1 million a night, or something.
That being said, she does write her own music, and that's how she started. So, but again, you sort of need the spectacle to go along with it.
Well, you do have young people writing their own music, and Mariah Carey and some of these others write their own songs, and Madonna gets credit for writing songs. I'm sure she does have input into all the songs. They're very creative people.
But it's different.
What's missing is the melody that you can't forget. The melody that, there used to be this song called Name That Tune.
I know that show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you wouldn't have that now because you
could never do it in 2 notes. They all sound the same.
By the 3rd or 4th note, you knew the song. See, that's a melody. A lot of this stuff now is just up and down. It doesn't really go anywhere. It has no identity whatsoever melodically. And the lyric is some mundane phrase said over 100 times.
If you look at some of the songs that you've written and produced, and you look at some of the more modern songs and you compare them, you see a lot of repetition. It's basically just the hook. That's kind of it. Versus something that, like we said before, reads like a poem, like a musical poem. So you question longevity at that point. So we're in the height of a different kind of music right now. So American Pie is celebrating it's being re-released after 45 years. In 45 years from now, what are we going to be listening to? I would bet people are still going to be listening to you.
Well, I hope so. But you never know what kind of upheavals will happen into a country. We are basically overly entertained. We're overly pleasured. We have all this TV and all this other stuff, food, everything is just happening all the time. It's all exciting. When I grew up, there was a lot of quiet. It was very quiet. I've said this in interviews before, like even in the early 60s, there was one phone in the house that didn't ever ring. If it did, it meant something. If it rang at night, it meant something serious. And if it rang late at night, it was really serious. So that was the kind of life that, it was. A car would go by once in a while. It was quiet. And the media had not entered the home at that point. There was radio, and TV was still very tame. Only a few channels with black and white things that were basically very...
Now you have people like me invading your mobile phones and your homes all the time.
Well, I'm on the phone all the time. And I hated that. I looked back and used to see and make fun of people that did that, and now I'm hooked. I text everybody I need to get things done. I'm always looking at that thing.
And do you also listen to music on your phone? Where do you stand on these streaming services and these more sort of social
I don't listen
outlets?
to music on the phone, but I love to watch YouTube clips of artists that I've loved or that am interested in following for the moment and seeing, what they're doing or whatever. But that I think is amazing. There's nothing I can't ask the phone, and find out something about something. So I kind of like that quite a bit. I knew so many artists growing up that have passed away, and I got to see them again singing and realize how good they were.
Who are some of your favorite artists?
Well, a lot of the people that I worked with knew, in the folk area. Of course, it was the Pete Seeger, Josh White, the Weavers, people like that. I love guitar music, so there's a lot of flamenco music that I love, like Carlos Montoya and Sabicas, people like that. I love to watch them play the guitar. A lot of blues players, Brownie McGee and Sonny Terry. Gospel groups that I would like, the Golden Gate Gospel Quartet. Just a whole lot of stuff that
a lot of variety, and I think that goes back to your point of the type of music you like to create.
And I love pop singers.
Yeah?
I love pop singers. Sarah Vaughan and Sinatra, and Doris Day is a great singer. People don't really realize what a good singer she is. I love the art of singing, breath control and vibrato and hitting the notes, all that stuff. The same thing, that Paul McCartney would tell you. I'm sure he would love all the people I just mentioned. That's, I think, why they were so interesting to me.
And it seems like you have just such a deep appreciation for music and for what it is that you do. Was there ever a point in your life that you wanted to do something else?
No, I was never good enough at anything to think of anything else. That's the one gift I had. I was lousy at sports and I was a crummy student. And so this was perfect for me. And but what I like what Kennedy said about the presidency. He said the full use of one's powers along lines of excellence. And I think that's what being in this particular game that I am in has allowed me to do. The best use of whatever powers I have along lines of excellence. And it's something to consider. People have so many things they can do, and they're swept up, and I think they don't believe in themselves enough. And one of the things that you really have to do, if you do feel a calling for something, is to realize that you're going to be on your own. You're going to lose contact with your friends. It's a lonely life, and it may not work out the way you want. So you pay a price right up front, because when I was starting out, I was traveling and playing these crummy nightclubs and staying in these rotten hotels, and my friends were going to college and going to proms and planning their job opportunities and all the things that they did. They were solid citizens, which you have to have. Couldn't have a country full of people like me, But I kind of dropped out in that sense and was in a different world. But I soon discovered some very smart people who were also in that world. And one of the things that you have to do is make your own schedule up. Create your own goals. In other words, I want to do this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to figure out how to do this. And whether it's write a song or make an album or anything,
So what is on your list of goals now?
My goals now are to keep breathing, keep standing.
You're still performing, though. You're in the middle of a tour right now.
I'm 71, for God's sakes, and I think I enjoy it more than I ever have.
And why is that?
Well, because I don't feel like I have to sell myself. I always felt like I had something I had to prove for a lot of years, because there was all this, as I said, there were these ups and downs, and I never really had you're in now, you know, and then I was never in. It'd be like things would be going slow, and then Garth Brooks would have me at Central Park and bring me out on stage, and all of a sudden the whole world was 5 years of flying high, and then it would sort of peter out a little, and then Madonna would do the song, you know, and everything would happen. I'd play at the White House, and you know, I'd have a TV special for PBS and do all these things.
That's so fascinating to hear this from you, who you really are. You're just such a legend in this industry, and you have had such a storied career, and you have a song that everyone knows and loves. For people who struggle within whatever the career is that you have, to know that even when from the outside looking in, it looks like you've made it. I mean, of course you've made it. Everyone knows who you are. It's still the same kind of struggles, and passion and perseverance are like the only things that are going to get you to the next level.
If you don't, you're going to be tested, you know, and even if you have some success, you're going to be tested. You can't ever quit. You always keep on. I mean, look at Bob Dylan as a perfect example. It was a front page article on the Wall Street Journal. Bob should retire. This was 5 or 6 years ago, before he won the Nobel Prize, before he did these other things. And who are they to say he should retire, you know, because he gives eclectic performances, and, you know, he gives a lot of them, and when he's not doing it anymore, people are going to miss it. They're going to say, wow, you know, it's over. And it will be over sooner than you think, because, you know, this is what happens at this stage of the game. But the thing is that you've got to do what it's like Tennessee Williams. He said, I write plays that I love, and the critics hate them but I'm not trying for the same things. You know, they want to hear a streetcar, they want to have a streetcar named Desire, they want to have you know, something that Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, something that he did before. And he's trying for new things. And that's what the artist, it's a lonely life, you know. Even when you make it, you're going to go to the next phase where you're going to be, you know, on the outside again, working towards something else. And you got to love it. And one of the things I learned from Pete Seeger, which I'll never forget, is that, you know, everything matters. This matters. You know, the Tonight Show matters. You know, a big deal thing matters, and a smaller thing matters. It all matters. Because you never know who you're going to speak to out there, who's going to be thinking about something. You gave somebody an idea, or you gave them inspiration to keep on.
And hopefully people watching this will feel the same way watching you here today. Of course, you are on tour right now. Beverly Hills is where you're playing. Isn't that where we are in Beverly Hills?
The Sebon Theater.
Not too far from here, end of the month. And the rest of the dates are on your website.
Yes.
Thank you guys so much for joining us, and thank you.
Thank you.